Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month, and there's also a free trial option, and that's where I'm posting my written recruiting content there. This podcast is also part of the Believe podcast family, every team, every topic, everywhere. And we'll go ahead and jump in. This is episode 105. Texas game visitors, and we'll jump to the recruiting news. So a little change of pace first. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of my thoughts about the Texas game. I'm not going to go into it in any great detail. You've got all kinds of other resources there, but I'll just give you a little bit of my opinion. So realistically, OU is able to score. I think OU's defense is going to play. I think they'll probably play a great game, but I think 21, 24, somewhere in the 20s is probably the best case scenario for them holding Texas down, even if they're able to force a couple of turnovers. Texas is pretty balanced on offense, has a good offensive line, a veteran offensive line, and a veteran quarterback. If Quinn Ewers is able to play the whole game, obviously he's had some injury issues. So Texas is probably somewhere in the 20s, mid 20s in terms of what they'll be able to score. Against Auburn, we saw OU was able to score 17 points on offense from 3 drives, basically 2 big plays, and they were able to also put together another drive that ended in a field goal. So OU is going to need to basically come up with the offensive improvement from OU over the last 2 weeks of preparation, hopefully, in terms of the wide receivers, the backup wide receivers who all know they have to play. Burks has been probably OU's known Burks has been out. So it's the same guys that knew they have to start against Auburn. So you've got that group. Mike Hawkins obviously will have 2 more weeks of first team practices and a second game and a game under his belt. So I think there's some potential reason for some improvement there from both the wide receiver core and Mike Hawkins. I think your biggest hope for improvement on the offensive side of the ball is that this will be the first game where we've started. This will be the first time that we have back-to-back starting offensive line lineup, the same offensive line lineup, that the 5 guys who started against Auburn are going to start at the same position against Texas. And they've had 2 weeks of that. And Branson Hickman and Jake Taylor have had 2 weeks to get healthy. So they're probably going to be at their healthiest. The offensive line is going to be at its most cohesive state this year. So I think all of that, indicates to me that OU has a chance along the offensive line for improvement, in my opinion. Texas, obviously, I think is a better defense than Tennessee across the whole lineup. I think Tennessee's better front 7. I think Texas is better in the secondary. So I think it's the best defense that OU will have seen, probably better than Auburn's. So, OU's improvement, neutral site game versus an away game. OU's going to have to find like 10 points of improvement on offense from the Auburn game, plus be at least +1 in the turnover margin, and not have any mistakes in the kicking game, which cost them points. So ideally some positivity in the kicking game, even from OU making all their field goals, Texas missing a field goal, and hopefully a big return and not giving up any big returns. So that's what I think it takes for OU to be in a 4th quarter game with Texas, which is basically what's happened the majority of the last 8 years, really. That it's been a 4th quarter game. Someone's made a big play in the 4th quarter. As the only game that really is the outlier in that entire series, the last sort of 8 years, is the Davis Bevel. OU has no quarterback game and kind of just falls apart in 2022. So that's where I think this game is probably heading. It is OU's best defense, I think, top to bottom since 2009. So you could see maybe a great OU defensive effort that somehow strangleholds the Texas's offense. That's a possibility, I think, depending upon OU's. So if the OU offense can just do enough to keep the defense healthy, there could be a low-scoring version of this game. But I think it's probably going to end up being something in the high 20s for Texas and OU. And it's almost impossible to project what OU will do on offense, not due to all the unknown variables that are out there. So I hate predicting this game. It's always a tough prediction. I'd be surprised if Texas covered. If they do, I think that signals some bad. That's probably a bad sign for OU moving forward, depending upon the turnover and quarterback performance. So we'll see. But this is, OU, if you take a look at all the advanced metrics and you take a look at everything that's gone on so far, this is where this 14 points, 15-point margin is coming from. OU's been double-digit favorite in this series a lot in the last 8 years, and the games have always come down to plays in the fourth quarter or holding on to a lead in the fourth quarter for the Sooners. So, double-digit favorites losing. It's been OU a couple of times. Texas, as the number one team in the nation, hasn't been that case since, I think, 1984. So, really, any trend lines you want to point to games from 1990 before are just kind of really irrelevant, in my opinion. Historically speaking, it's just this isn't the same football. I'm not playing the same brand of football any longer. So that's my thoughts on the Texas game. OU has a chance to if they play really well, has a chance to make this a fourth quarter game, and then it's just down to one possession: who makes a big play, who doesn't make a big play. Could Mike Hawkins make a bad play and cost OU? Yep, sure. First game, freshman starting quarterback in the Cotton Bowl. Could Mike scramble and make a big Kyler-like play that helps OU in the fourth quarter? Sure. So it's a lot of variables, but that's my basic general thoughts on the Texas game. A lot of Texas sites are predicting a blowout by Texas, like 48 points or 38 points to Texas, and I'm not quite sure how Texas gets there. Without a lot of help from the Sooners in terms of special teams mistakes, defense, kind of just significant defensive breakdowns, and the OU offense being just completely ineffective. So we'll see what happens. But I think defensively, the OU defense I think is the best group on the field, and obviously the Texas offense and defense, are obviously 2-3, and obviously the fourth group by a big distance has been the OU offense so far this season. So, all right, well, let's move on to recruiting. That's what we talk about in this show. So, 2025 updates. OU's offered Caleb Burns, the linebacker I talked about on the last update. He will not be in Dallas. OU can host visitors this year. They're the home, technically the home team, so they can offer unofficial visitor tickets. They won't get to interact with the players after the game, I believe. Those contact rules are still in place because it's a neutral site. But OU does get to invite kids. But Caleb Burns, for a while, has had an Oregon official visit scheduled. So he'll be heading to Oregon. OU's hoping to get him back on campus next week for the South Carolina game, if possible. To start to really, jumpstart their recruiting effort. In other 2025 news, Bill Bedenbaugh was out visiting Andrew Babalola last night. The Rivals guys were one of the Rivals national guys was out watching Babalola. He looks fantastic. On the hoof. Still no decision point from him. I don't think Bill would be there Friday night before the Texas game unless he still was in heavy communication with Babalola and OU thought they were a serious contender for his signature. Although, national letter of intents apparently being canceled. So we have to come up with some new verbiage and terminology around financial aid packages and whatever else they could replace it with. In addition, Josh from Sooner Scoop was out visiting Ryan Foji, the OU offensive tackle target from Verbal from Houston. You can find it. You can find it on YouTube. He's got a good interview and excellent footage of Foji. If you just go to YouTube and type in Sooner Scoop, you'll find it. Foji looks like Babalola, just looks like a complete monster as his high school senior. He looks like he's 6'6", 285, 290 maybe, and just not carrying bad weight at all, and just looking like sort of, he came out of the prototype offensive tackle factory. So there's a good chance Foji will just make a monster move up the rankings this year, I think. So 247 is reporting that OU is making a move for Benny Patterson, defensive end, defensive lineman from Indiana. He's ranked a 3-star, but he has offers like a top 200 player in the nation. I've watched his senior film highlight package, first 4 or 5 games, and it's fantastic. He looks like a menacing, elite-looking defensive lineman, twitchy, burst. I'd probably play him at defensive end, but I imagine he has the potential that he could be a 3-tech if you added weight to him, or he could be a big defensive end. Either way, OU would need a player like that in their recruiting class. To me, he's a take all the way. Get him on campus, and hopefully get him on campus for an official visit and close on him and just add him to the D-line group. So OU appears to be after Patterson, but there's no new news on bigger defensive tackles, big nose guards, or anything along those lines. For a deeper dive on that issue, the Patreon site that I referenced, the Sooners 360 Patreon site, has an article. I put an article together with some additional names at defensive tackle that I'd like to see OU offer. So still waiting on some feedback on what's going to happen there. Everyone seems to be waiting on it. No one seems to have some direct answers. But as I've mentioned before, Todd Bates has never had OU undersign at D-line on signing day. Whether it's usually the February signing day after he was hired to get Grayson Holton, whether it's 2023 when he picked up Marcus Strong and Ashton Sanders after losing out on some targets, or last year when he made sure to get Jaden Jackson, David Stone, working with Chavis to get Nigel Smith, Wyatt Gilmore, and then in the portal, obviously picking up players like Dejon Terry, Dominic Williams. Bates is not sitting on his hands, not adding talent and depth. So just stay tuned. Something's building, I think, at D tackle. So we're going to focus now on the Texas visitors. And that's going to be the rest of this quick recruiting report to give you guys hopefully something to listen to before the game, or something to listen to until I can put together a report on high school action this weekend and this Friday night, and some other news hopefully will come through from a recruiting standpoint. So, like I said, the Texas game, OU is going to have verbals from old classes visiting. We'll have from 2025, a lot of the class will visit. Probably upwards of 15 to 20 players will be there, including Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foji. From 2026, Jaden O'Neal is coming in from California. We'll go into the whole weird thing with his high school forfeiture games on a later podcast, but Jaden's coming for his first OU Texas game. If I was OU, I'd be pretty. I would find a way to see if I can buddy up O'Neal with Fasusi, Foji, Elijah Thomas, Cortez Mills, and Emmanuel Choice. If the wide receiver group's all going to be there as well, and Torrey Blaylock, just to make sure O'Neal knows that the class ahead of him is loaded with playmakers and two bookend elite possible NFL talents at offensive tackles. Reemphasize the message that when you come to OU, when you take over a quarterback, we're gonna have an elite O-line for you. That would be my recruiting strategy from there. And obviously, Zane Rowe, the 2027 verbal from Denton Geyer, the defensive end, star defensive end, who's having an excellent sophomore year, will also be there. There's only one other 2025 name of note to really talk about, and I'm not really sure how much there is to talk about, but here we go. 2025 tight end, Nate Roberts, the 6'4", 6'5", 235-pound tight end from Washington, Oklahoma, 4-star, top 200 player in the nation, committed to Ohio State. He's going to be down in Dallas watching his brother, Jake. That makes 3 OU games he's been to at the very least. OU fans keep hoping this will lead somewhere. And I guess in recruiting, you never know. We'll do the Dumber and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance? Kind of meme comments right now. Do I think he's going to flip from Ohio State? No, but at some point, everyone's like, well, why is OU wasting visits on him? Well, they're not really wasting anything. It's just a ticket. He could get a ticket as a relative from Jake, so it just makes more sense for OU to might as well just give him a ticket that puts him in the recruit section. Why not, right? So can't hurt. He's not talking up Ohio State to anybody that we've heard. So, but he'll be there. Maybe OU can. Maybe Barrett Sharp has a big game or something. I'm reaching at straws here to think what might be what mechanic could put Roberts back in play. But he'll be at the game. All right, and now let's move to new guys from the 2 classes where this is maybe a little more relevant, 2026 and 2027. So for 2026, a couple of the names, we're going to start with some O-line names, and some of these names are going to be familiar to you guys because I've mentioned them before as visitors for the games already. So OU, John Turntine, the Dallas area 5-star offensive guard, offensive tackle, will be at the game. A lot of folks think he's heading to Austin. That's his favorite. Of course, they said the same thing about Fasusi. And lately, Bill Beanbaugh's been giving him some serious attention. So OU thinks something is up there a little bit in terms of his recruiting. I'm not sure he's making any decisions soon, but Turntine is a serious talent, and OU looks to at least be putting their best foot forward to make Texas work on landing him. Then a guy that I think OU's in better shape with, if we can project that far out, is Felix Ojo, the offensive tackle from Mansfield, 6'7", in the 280 range, top 100, 4-star. I think he's the best left tackle prospect that OU is recruiting right now for 2026. He's been in Norman a number of times, a lot of times. And I think he also has kind of like that top 50, 5-star kind of potential as well. The next are 2 offensive guards. Both are have a Polynesian background, I believe. The first is Toa Katoa from Euless Trinity. We've talked about him in the past. He's 6'3", 360, moves ridiculously well for a guy that big. He's unranked right now, but UT and OU are heavily pursuing him. Again, he's got an offer list of a top 200, top 150 player in the nation, and I think that's where he'll end up. And the other guy is Pulelite Primus. I've mentioned him before. He was one of the offensive linemen like Toa Katoa that picked up an offer at the OU summer camp session. He's been OU several times since then. He's an offensive guard, offensive center, maybe 6'4", 315 from Midland. Right now, he's also unranked, but the rankings is just behind. He's got his offer list is a top 150 talent range as well. So those two guys, if you just think about those four players right there, you could basically have a right tackle and Turntine, left tackle and Ojo, and then your two guards, Katoa and Primus, flanking them. And someone who's not at the game, but an offensive guard, I think OU has a lead on Noah Best from Midlothian, who used to be from Owasso, could easily be your center in that class. So when we say that Bill Bedenbaugh's doing a better job with advanced recruiting on the offensive line, this is what we're talking about. Then a name I've mentioned again a lot of times, KJ Ford, the defensive end from Duncanville, 6'4", 230, top 100 type four-star player. OU probably fighting Texas A&M, and LSU for his services. Ford's been to OU maybe more than Ojo or Katoa. He's been to 3 games, I think, already. He's just been to Norman a lot. I think OU, if you're looking at just visit trends and things like that, I think OU might lead, and I think he might be, OU's in the top 3 of OU's targets at defensive end. Then a name I mentioned previously in a recent podcast, Davion Gross, the wide receiver, running back hybrid guy from Frisco Lone Star, who's a 5-star on 247, will be at the game or should be at the game. That's the second time for Gross to see the Sooners after getting his offer. OU appears to be building up some momentum there. Now, is he a running back or a wide receiver? I just don't think it matters. If you want to think of a comp, think of Cordero Patterson in the NFL out of Tennessee with better wide receiver skills. So, but same sort of frame and just same electric kind of athleticism. And then 2 big wide receivers. I'm going to finish off with 2 big wide receivers. This is nowhere near an exhaustive list, just the guys I've been able to confirm through various posts online and Twitter. It's public information that's out there. Zion Robinson, the 6'4", 185-pound wide receiver from Mansfield, who listed the top 100 4-star. OU's aggressively pursuing Robinson. I'm pretty sure Robinson, if I have this right, Robinson's dad is a track coach at TCU. So there's obviously connections to TCU, but OU's aggressively going after him. And Robinson is a freakishly agile, explosive guy for being 6'4". Just guys that big shouldn't be that athletic, fluid, and explosive. And then speaking of big wide receivers, a guy we've also talked about recently due to his play his junior year, Aljor Miles, the 6'3", 200-pound receiver from Kaufman, Texas, ranked by One Service in the top 200. I think should be a composite 4-star. As we've mentioned, he's off to a huge start to his junior year. Maybe as physically talented as anyone OU is recruiting at wide receiver for 2026. Just big, physical, fast, athletic, just an all-round receiver and in a big body frame. So that's 2026. So we'll quickly move to 2027. Obviously, the first name I already mentioned was Zane Rowe out of Denton, 6'5", 230-pound defensive end. I think he's a top 50 player in the nation, easy 4-star. By the time his senior year, it wouldn't surprise me if he's in the 5-star territory. He's having a great start to his sophomore season. So definitely trending up. Then we have Ethan Booby Feaster from DeSoto, the 5-star wide receiver. This will be the second time that Feaster has seen the Sooners this fall. OU doesn't usually have a lot of luck at DeSoto. But if anybody can break this, it would be Emmett Jones and his longtime connections in the Dallas metro area, especially, and at wide receiver, I think gives OU a shot. And then Brian Swanson, the offensive tackle from South Oak Cliff, who's also in the 4-star top 100 area. This will be his second time for Swanson to see OU after getting his offer at OU summer camp. Bill doesn't offer a lot of 2027 folks. In fact, I think really this is the first time I can actually really recall like an early offer like this at offensive tackle. And I think Swanson could easily, again, be a 5-star type player in a year or two. Then we'll move to 2 defenders before we get back to wide receivers. The first is, I mentioned this guy before, Joseph Graves, defensive tackle, 6'3", 285, 290 from Booker T, Washington, and Tulsa. He's unranked right now. I don't see any way he's not a top 200, top 100 defensive tackle as things move forward. He was a summer camp star where he earned his offer. It's rare to see OU offer defensive tackles that's this early. So Graves put on a great performance. He's got good genes. His dad, Pearly Graves, was a star out of high school. Some injuries held back his dad's career at Texas Tech. But Joseph seems to be off to just a fantastic start. He's also a heavyweight wrestler. Yeah, you just love that with a defensive tackle prospect. Then I mentioned Braylon Williams, the Beast, last week and earlier this week. He's visiting again. His film's just great. So I think he's going to be. He's right now a top 50 by Rivals on 2027. No one else really has 27 rankings. So he's a 4-star. I'd be stunned if he's not a top 50, top 100 type player. The fact that OU's getting him on campus, so to speak, right after the offer, I think is a good sign. And then we'll jump back to wide receiver. And then another wide receiver from Crowley, just like Turntine is from Crowley. It's Antonavius Ellis or Tay Ellis, 6 foot, 180 pounds, ranked in the top 100 by several services. So along with Feaster and Trenton Yancey, who's at Duncanville, and also heavily looking at OU, Ellis looks like the other elite wide receiver from the Dallas metro area. So, OU's basically got at least 3 guys they've identified already this early, elite kids from the sort of broader Dallas metro area that they're looking at, and at least 2 of them are going to be at the Cotton Bowl. So, good start from Emmett Jones there for 2027 as well. So, guys, that's really the recruiting update I wanted to give you. I'll have another one post-Texas and post some other updates, post some other high school action, and post some information, hopefully getting a little information from these guys after they take their visits and post some social media traffic. So we'll be back early next week with an update for you. Hopefully you can get this update before the Texas game or watch the Texas game and then listen to this update afterwards. So thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and don't forget to leave a rating. Again, please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content. That Patreon site directly supports this podcast, keeps this podcast free, allows me to keep giving you guys, try and give you guys 2 podcasts a week as the news is available. So please give us a try. There's a trial option. It's only $2 a month. And like I said, hopefully you enjoy this podcast on either the podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. If you're enjoying this content, please give the Patreon site a try. Thanks, everyone.